Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about wisdom. Wisdom in how we treat each other. Wisdom in understanding relationships. Smart men know that love, respect, and trust are the cornerstones of any strong partnership. But there are also certain pitfalls that smart men must avoid when it comes to women. Today, we'll dive into 9 things that smart men should never do with women. Because how we conduct ourselves in relationships defines not only who we are, but also the value we bring into the lives of those we care about. Disrespect isn't just about what you say, it's about how you say it and how you treat someone in every interaction. Disrespect can manifest in subtle ways like dismissing her ideas, interrupting her when she speaks, or neglecting to value her contributions in your shared life. It's in the tone you use, the body language you convey, and the effort you choose to put into understanding her perspective. A smart man knows that the moment he disrespects a woman, he begins to undermine the trust and connection that are the foundation of any healthy relationship. Respect means honoring her boundaries, listening to her without judgment, and appreciating her individuality. It's about recognizing her strengths, even if they differ from your own, and celebrating what she brings to the table rather than tearing her down. Disrespect isn't always overt sometimes. It's in the little things, a sarcastic remark, a thoughtless action, or a refusal to acknowledge her worth. These small cuts can add up, eroding the trust and admiration that hold a relationship together. Moreover, disrespect is a reflection of you, not her. When you treat someone with disdain or disregard, it shows a lack of maturity and understanding within yourself. On the other hand, a man who carries himself with dignity extends that dignity to others, especially to the woman who shares his life. Respecting her means recognizing that she is a partner, not a subordinate. It means giving her the space to be herself, to voice her opinions, and to make decisions without feeling diminished or silenced. A smart man also understands that respect is not conditional. It doesn't depend on whether you agree with her or whether she's acting in a way you prefer. True respect is unwavering. It's rooted in the understanding that every individual deserves to be treated with kindness, consideration, and fairness. Even in moments of conflict or disagreement, respect should never be compromised. It's in these moments that your character as a man is most clearly revealed. When you respect a woman, you build a foundation of trust and admiration that allows the relationship to flourish. You show her that you see her, value her, and appreciate her for who she is. Respect isn't just a gift you give her, it's a standard you set for yourself, a commitment to act with integrity, and a declaration of the kind of person you aspire to be. Mind games are a dangerous and immature way to navigate relationships, and a smart man knows better than to engage in them. Manipulating emotions, creating unnecessary confusion, or using tactics to maintain control in a relationship is not a sign of strength, it's a glaring sign of insecurity. When you play mind games, you may think you're maintaining an upper hand, but in reality, you're eroding trust, creating emotional chaos, and ultimately sabotaging the foundation of any meaningful connection. Mind games often come from a place of fear or powerlessness, fear of vulnerability, fear of losing control, or fear of being hurt, but relationships thrive on authenticity, not deceit. When you choose manipulation over open communication, you send the message that you value power over partnership, and that never ends well. A woman worth her salt will eventually see through the facade, and when she does, it's nearly impossible to rebuild the trust you've broken. Think about what mind games look like: withholding affection to get her to chase you, being intentionally vague to keep her guessing, or acting hot and cold to see how far she'll go to gain your approval. These behaviors are not just toxic, they're counterproductive. A healthy relationship is built on clarity, not confusion. A woman wants to feel safe, understood, and valued, not like she's competing in a game where the rules are constantly shifting. Moreover, mind games often backfire. While you might think you're staying in control, you're actually losing her respect. A woman who recognizes your worth will also expect you to recognize hers. She doesn't have time to decipher mixed signals or navigate emotional mazes. She deserves consistency, honesty, and a man who is secure enough to be straightforward about his feelings and intentions. Engaging in mind games can also take a toll on you. The constant scheming, the need to maintain a false sense of power, and the fear of vulnerability create unnecessary stress. Instead of fostering connection, you end up isolating yourself, pushing her further away, and undermining your own emotional well-being. Real strength comes from being genuine, transparent, and unafraid to show your true self, not from creating an illusion to mask your insecurities. When you refrain from playing mind games, you allow for a relationship that is based on mutual respect and understanding. You create an environment where both of you can grow, communicate openly, and feel secure in the knowledge that neither is trying to outwit the other. A smart man recognizes that love isn't a battlefield, it's a partnership. And in that partnership, honesty and integrity will always trump manipulation and deceit. Your values define who you are. They are the core principles that guide your actions, decisions, and overall character. When you compromise your values for the sake of a relationship, you not only betray yourself, but you also undermine the foundation of that relationship. A smart man understands that staying true to his values is non-negotiable, no matter how enticing or challenging the situation may be. In relationships, it's easy to find yourself tempted to bend your values in the name of love, compatibility, or even avoidance of conflict. But this path leads to an erosion of self-respect. If you sacrifice your moral compass to please someone else, you end up building a relationship on shaky ground, a ground where authenticity is replaced by pretense. Over time, this facade crumbles, leaving both parties feeling disillusioned and disconnected. Compromising your values might look like tolerating disrespect, engaging in behaviors you fundamentally oppose, or staying silent on matters that matter to you deeply. Perhaps you find yourself agreeing to things that make you uncomfortable because you fear losing her. Maybe you let go of your goals, beliefs, or standards just to keep the peace or to be seen as accommodating. These small compromises might seem harmless in the moment, but they add up, slowly chipping away at your sense of identity. When you abandon your values, you also set a dangerous precedent for the relationship. It sends the message that your boundaries are flexible, that your convictions are negotiable, and that you are willing to suppress your needs and desires to avoid confrontation or rejection. This dynamic breeds imbalance and invites manipulation, creating a relationship where one party holds the power while the other continually sacrifices. Additionally, compromising your values doesn't just affect your relationship, it impacts your entire life. It creates internal conflict, a nagging sense of dissatisfaction that can manifest as stress, resentment, or even a loss of self-worth. The truth is, no relationship is worth losing yourself over. A smart man knows that true love doesn't demand that he give up the essence of who he is. Being true to your values is also a sign of strength and integrity. It demonstrates that you are a man who knows what he stands for and refuses to settle for less. This kind of confidence and self-assuredness is magnetic. It commands respect. A woman of substance will admire your commitment to your principles, even if it means making difficult decisions or setting firm boundaries. Your values are the bedrock of your life. They guide you in defining what is acceptable, what is meaningful, and what is worth pursuing. When you stay true to them, you attract a partner who aligns with your principles and respects your boundaries. You create a relationship that is built on mutual respect, understanding, and a shared vision of life. Never lose sight of the fact that a relationship should enhance who you are, not diminish it. Promises are not just words, they are commitments that hold the weight of trust, integrity, and intention. When you make a promise, you create an expectation, and fulfilling that expectation becomes a measure of your character. For a smart man, this principle is especially vital in relationships. Promises made without the intent or ability to keep them can damage the foundation of trust, leaving fractures that may never fully heal. When you tell a woman you'll do something, whether it's as small as showing up on time or as significant as committing to a future together, she places her faith in your words. That faith isn't something to be taken lightly. It's a fragile thread that connects your actions to her sense of security and belief in the relationship. Breaking that thread, even unintentionally, can lead to disappointment, resentment, and doubt, not just in you, but in the relationship as a whole. Sometimes men make promises out of a desire to please, impress, or avoid conflict in the moment. You might say, "I'll call you tonight knowing your schedule is packed." Or you might promise to change a behavior or plan a special date, only to let it fall by the wayside as life gets busy. These seemingly small broken promises add up, creating a pattern that can erode the trust she has in your ability to follow through. A broken promise sends a message. Even if it's unintentional, it says that your words are not dependable. Over time, this undermines the relationship's stability. She may begin to second-guess everything you say, questioning whether your actions will match your declarations. This lack of trust can lead to emotional distance, frustration, and ultimately a breakdown in communication. It's important to understand that promises are not about perfection, they're about accountability. No one expects you to have superhuman abilities to deliver on every single thing you say. But when you overcommit or speak without fully considering your capacity to follow through, you set yourself up for failure. A smart man knows that honesty, even if it means saying, "I'm not sure, I'll try my best," is far better than overpromising and underdelivering. Making realistic promises also reflects self-awareness and respect for your partner. It shows that you value her time, emotions, and trust enough to only say what you mean. If you're unsure you can deliver on a promise, it's better to express that uncertainty than to give false hope. This kind of honesty doesn't weaken your image, it strengthens it. It demonstrates that you're a man of integrity, someone who takes responsibility for his words and actions. Additionally, the promises you make should align with your values and intentions. Avoid making promises just to keep the peace or to appear agreeable in the moment. Instead, think about whether you can realistically and wholeheartedly commit to what you're saying. If you can't, have the courage to communicate that up front. This approach builds mutual understanding and sets a precedent for healthy, honest communication. A promise is a reflection of your reliability, and reliability is one of the cornerstones of a strong, lasting relationship. When you consistently keep your promises, you show her that she can trust you, that she can count on you, and that your words are more than just fleeting sentiments. You demonstrate that you're a man of action, someone who respects her enough to honor the commitments he makes. Promises, when kept, build connection and deepen trust. When broken, they create walls that can be difficult to break down. A smart man understands the importance of his words and chooses them wisely, recognizing that every promise he makes carries with it the power to build or break the bond he shares with the woman in his life. Comparing a woman to someone else is one of the most destructive things a man can do in a relationship. It sends a message that she is being measured against a standard that isn't her own, diminishing her unique value and undermining the connection you share. Every woman wants to feel seen, cherished, and celebrated for who she truly is, not as a reflection of someone else or a competitor in a game she didn't ask to play. When you compare her to another woman, whether it's about appearance, personality, or accomplishments, you strip away her individuality. You might think a harmless comment like, "My ex used to cook this dish differently," or "That celebrity has great style," is insignificant. But for her, it's a signal that she isn't enough as she is. These comparisons can plant seeds of insecurity, making her question whether she can ever meet your unspoken expectations. Comparison often emerges from thoughtlessness, not malice. It might seem like an offhand remark to you, but for her, it can linger and fester, replaying in her mind as a reminder of where she feels she falls short. Even when the intention isn't to criticize, the impact can be deeply wounding. Relationships thrive on mutual respect and emotional safety, and comparing her to another woman jeopardizes both. A smart man understands that every woman is her own masterpiece, painted with experiences, strengths, and flaws that make her who she is. Instead of looking at what she isn't, focus on celebrating what she is. Maybe she doesn't dress like a fashion icon or cook like a chef, but she brings something to your life that no one else can. She has a way of laughing at your jokes, encouraging your dreams, or simply being present when you need her most. These are the things that make her irreplaceable. It's also important to recognize that comparing her to another woman doesn't just hurt her, it diminishes your relationship as well. It shifts the focus from growth and connection to judgment and dissatisfaction. Over time, this erodes trust and intimacy. She may start to pull away emotionally, feeling like she's in constant competition with women who aren't even in the room. Remember, no one wants to feel like they're second best or that they're being held to an impossible standard. She doesn't need to know how other women have influenced your life or how they might measure up in your mind. What she needs is to feel like she's your priority, that she's the one you've chosen, and that your focus is on building something meaningful with her, not revisiting the past or fantasizing about someone else. Avoiding comparisons also shows emotional maturity. It reflects your ability to appreciate people for who they are without resorting to unnecessary judgments or criticisms. This doesn't mean ignoring her flaws or pretending she's perfect, but it does mean recognizing that comparisons are unhelpful and often unfair. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and comparing them across individuals does a disservice to their uniqueness. Instead of comparing, practice gratitude for her presence in your life. Think about the qualities that drew you to her in the first place and the ways she adds value to your journey. Let her know that she's enough just as she is, not because she's better than someone else, but because she's authentically herself. This kind of affirmation goes a long way in building a relationship founded on trust and mutual appreciation. When you stop comparing her to other women, you also free yourself from the cycle of dissatisfaction. You start to see her as a partner, not a checklist of attributes or a reflection of someone else's image. You give yourself the chance to truly connect, to learn from each other, and to grow together. In the end, relationships aren't about finding someone who checks every box. They're about creating a bond that transcends the boxes altogether. Choosing not to compare her isn't just about protecting her feelings, it's about showing her the respect she deserves. It's about honoring the relationship you're building and affirming that she's not just another woman in your life, she's the woman in your life. And that makes all the difference. Taking someone for granted is one of the silent destroyers of relationships. It creeps in subtly, often without intent, but its impact is profound and far-reaching. When a man takes a woman for granted, he unintentionally communicates that her efforts, her presence, and her value are somehow expected rather than appreciated. It sends the message that what she does and who she is no longer hold the special significance they once did, creating a dangerous imbalance in the relationship. When she cooks your favorite meal, listens to your troubles after a long day, or goes out of her way to support your dreams, these are not things to be overlooked. They are acts of love, care, and dedication that deserve recognition and gratitude. But when these acts are met with indifference or assumed as part of her role, it erodes the emotional bond between you. Over time, she may start to feel invisible, undervalued, and even resentful. Taking her for granted can manifest in countless ways. It might look like forgetting to thank her for the little things she does, dismissing her concerns when she voices them, or assuming that she'll always be there no matter how much effort you put into the relationship. It's the failure to see her as an individual with her own needs, desires, and boundaries, and instead treating her contributions as routine or obligatory. A smart man recognizes that love and connection are not static. They require constant care and attention. He understands that no matter how secure the relationship may feel, it is always important to show appreciation. A simple thank you, a heartfelt compliment, or a small gesture of kindness can make a world of difference. These actions reaffirm her importance in your life and show that you don't take her time, energy, or love for granted. Taking someone for granted often stems from complacency. In the beginning of a relationship, everything feels new and exciting, and both partners go out of their way to make each other feel special. But as the relationship progresses, it's easy to fall into a routine where the extraordinary becomes ordinary and the effort wanes. This is where mindfulness is key. Relationships thrive when both partners make a conscious effort to nurture the connection and acknowledge each other's contributions. Another aspect of not taking her for granted is being present. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to become distracted by work, social media, or other responsibilities, but nothing replaces the value of undivided attention. When she talks, listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. When she needs support, be there not just physically, but emotionally. These moments of presence and attentiveness show that you value her, her feelings, and the relationship you share. It's also crucial to acknowledge the sacrifices she makes for the relationship. Whether she's balancing her career with family responsibilities, supporting your ambitions, or managing the challenges of daily life, these are not things to be overlooked. Showing appreciation doesn't have to be extravagant sometimes. A heartfelt acknowledgement of her efforts is enough to make her feel seen and valued. Taking her for granted can also manifest in how you handle conflicts and disagreements. When you dismiss her feelings or fail to take her perspective into account, you risk creating emotional distance. Instead, approach conflicts with empathy and a willingness to understand. Show her that her opinions matter, that her emotions are valid, and that you're committed to resolving issues together. So, above all, remember that relationships are not about what one person can do for the other. They are about mutual respect, effort, and appreciation. When you show her that you value her contributions, you strengthen the foundation of your bond. You make her feel secure, loved, and cherished, which in turn fosters a deeper connection and mutual respect. Taking her for granted isn't just about what you do. It's also about what you fail to do. It's the missed opportunities to express gratitude, the lack of effort to show care, and the failure to recognize her worth. By being mindful and intentional in your actions, you not only prevent this from happening, but you also create a relationship where both partners feel valued, respected, and deeply connected. Hiding your emotions might feel like a sign of strength, but in reality, it's a barrier that can prevent genuine connection and trust. When you bottle up how you feel, whether it's sadness, frustration, joy, or love, you create a wall between yourself and the woman you care about. This wall may seem like protection, but over time it isolates you emotionally and robs the relationship of its depth and authenticity. Many men grow up being taught that vulnerability is a weakness, that showing emotion makes you less of a man. Society often reinforces this belief, glorifying stoicism and emotional detachment. But here's the truth: vulnerability is not a weakness. It's a profound strength. It takes courage to admit that you're hurting, to confess that you're scared, or to share your joy without reservation. And this courage is what builds emotional intimacy and trust in a relationship. When you hide your emotions, you also deprive her of the opportunity to truly know you. A relationship thrives when both people feel seen, heard, and understood. But if you're always masking your feelings, you're not allowing her to understand your inner world. She might feel shut out, as though there's a part of you she can never reach. This can lead to misunderstandings, frustration, and a sense of emotional distance, even when the two of you are physically close. Being open about your emotions doesn't mean you have to be overly dramatic or wear your heart on your sleeve at all times. It means being honest about how you feel, especially in moments that matter. If something she said hurt you, tell her. If you're feeling overwhelmed by work or life, share that with her. If you're happy or proud of something, let her celebrate with you. When you do this, you allow her to support you, comfort you, and connect with you on a deeper level. Suppressing your emotions often leads to unhealthy coping mechanisms. Anger might build up until it explodes in ways you didn't intend. Sadness might fester and turn into resentment. And the more you suppress, the harder it becomes to access those emotions when you really need to. By hiding how you feel, you're not only hurting the relationship, but also yourself. Emotional suppression takes a toll on your mental and physical health, leading to stress, anxiety, and even physical ailments. Women are often highly intuitive and can sense when something is off. When you're hiding your emotions, she may pick up on your discomfort or tension, even if you think you're doing a good job concealing it. This can lead to confusion and insecurity. She may start to question what's wrong or whether she's done something to upset you. By being honest and upfront about your emotions, you eliminate this uncertainty and build an atmosphere of openness and trust. It's important to remember that emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are simply a part of the human experience, and they all serve a purpose. Anger can highlight an injustice, sadness can signal the need for healing, and joy can remind you of what's truly important. Sharing these emotions with the woman in your life allows her to understand your experiences and respond in ways that strengthen your bond. Hiding your emotions can also set a precedent in the relationship that emotions aren't welcome or that vulnerability is taboo. This can discourage her from sharing her own feelings, creating a cycle of emotional repression that stifles the relationship. By leading with vulnerability, you not only create space for your own emotions, but also for hers. You show her that it's safe to be open, that she can trust you with her feelings, and that your relationship is a space for mutual support and understanding. It's worth noting that sharing your emotions doesn't mean losing control of them. Emotional maturity involves expressing how you feel in a way that's constructive rather than destructive. It's about communicating your needs, concerns, and joys without blaming, shaming, or lashing out. When you approach emotions with this level of responsibility, you strengthen your relationship and demonstrate true leadership. At its core, hiding your emotions denies the relationship the depth and authenticity it needs to thrive. By opening up, you allow the woman in your life to see and understand the real you, not just the surface level version you think you're supposed to present. And in doing so, you create a relationship built on trust, empathy, and mutual respect. Controlling behavior is one of the quickest ways to erode trust, respect, and affection in a relationship. It often stems from insecurity, fear of loss, or a misguided belief that control is equivalent to care or protection. But trying to control a woman, whether subtly or overtly, undermines her autonomy and individuality. It sends a message that you don't trust her to make her own decisions or handle her life, and this can be deeply damaging to the foundation of any relationship. Control can manifest in many forms, some obvious and others more covert. It might look like dictating what she wears, who she spends time with, or how she spends her day. It could also be more subtle, like constantly questioning her decisions, criticizing her choices, or trying to steer her behavior under the guise of helping her. These actions, while perhaps well-intentioned, chip away at her sense of self and create a dynamic of imbalance and inequality. No one wants to feel like they're being micromanaged in their personal life. A relationship should be a partnership, not a power struggle. When you try to control a woman, you're not just disrespecting her autonomy, you're also showing a lack of confidence in yourself. It suggests that you don't believe the relationship can thrive unless you're the one pulling all the strings, which ultimately reveals more about your insecurities than her actions. It's crucial to understand that love is not about possession. True love is about freedom, growth, and mutual respect. When you try to control someone, you're not loving them, you're trying to mold them into an image that suits your needs or fears. This isn't love, it's manipulation. And over time, it will push her away emotionally, even if she stays physically present. Controlling behavior often backfires, creating the very outcomes you were trying to avoid. When a woman feels stifled or suffocated, she's more likely to rebel or withdraw. The more you try to tighten your grip, the more she will seek ways to escape. Control breeds resentment, and resentment erodes the emotional connection that holds a relationship together. Healthy relationships are built on trust and mutual respect. Trust means giving her the freedom to make her own choices and trusting that she will act in the best interest of herself and the relationship. Respect means honoring her individuality, her opinions, and her right to live her life as she sees fit. Without these two elements, a relationship becomes a cage rather than a sanctuary. It's also important to recognize that control is often rooted in fear. Fear of losing her, fear of being hurt, or fear of being vulnerable. But these fears are not a justification for controlling behavior. Instead of trying to control her, focus on addressing those fears within yourself. Work on building your self-confidence, strengthening your emotional resilience, and creating a sense of security that doesn't depend on controlling someone else. When you avoid controlling behavior, you create an environment where love can truly flourish. She will feel valued, respected, and free to be herself, and this will deepen the emotional connection between you. A woman who feels respected and trusted is more likely to invest in the relationship and reciprocate that respect and trust. Controlling behavior also stifles your own growth. When you're so focused on managing someone else's life, you neglect your own development. You miss opportunities to grow as an individual, to work on your own insecurities, and to build a relationship that's based on equality rather than dominance. Letting go of control doesn't just benefit her, it benefits you as well. Ultimately, avoiding controlling behavior is about recognizing that love thrives in freedom, not constraint. It's about trusting that she is capable of making her own choices and that the strength of your relationship doesn't depend on how tightly you hold on, but on how much you're willing to let go. In any relationship, it's easy to lose sight of your own needs and identity while focusing on your partner. Love has a way of pulling us into the orbit of another person's life where we feel compelled to support, nurture, and give endlessly. But one of the greatest mistakes you can make is neglecting yourself in the process. Prioritizing your well-being is not selfish, it's essential. When you forget to prioritize yourself, you risk becoming a shadow of who you once were. You might start to compromise on your goals, hobbies, and personal growth to accommodate someone else's needs. While compromise is a natural part of any relationship, it should never come at the expense of your sense of self. Losing touch with who you are not only diminishes your individuality, but also weakens the dynamic of the relationship. A strong relationship is built on two complete individuals coming together, not one person sacrificing themselves to complete the other. If you're constantly putting your needs on the back burner, you're setting a precedent that your time, goals, and happiness are secondary. Over time, this imbalance can lead to frustration, resentment, and even burnout. Relationships thrive when both partners are fulfilled, not when one is drained. Prioritizing yourself doesn't mean pulling away from your partner or neglecting the relationship. It means carving out space for self-care, personal growth, and introspection. It means ensuring that you're meeting your own emotional, physical, and mental needs before trying to meet someone else's. You can't pour from an empty cup. And neglecting yourself will only leave you feeling depleted and disconnected. One of the ways to prioritize yourself is by setting boundaries. Boundaries are not about keeping someone out, they're about protecting what's important to you. When you set boundaries, you communicate your needs clearly and create a healthier dynamic where both partners can thrive. This might mean setting aside time for your passions, maintaining friendships outside the relationship, or being clear about what you're willing and unwilling to tolerate. Another way to prioritize yourself is by investing in your personal growth. Whether it's pursuing a career goal, learning a new skill, or simply taking time to reflect and recharge, focusing on your development makes you a better partner and a more fulfilled individual. It also shows your partner that you value yourself, which inspires respect and admiration. When you prioritize yourself, you bring a sense of balance to the relationship. You're not relying on your partner to fulfill every need or expectation because you're already working to fulfill them within yourself. This creates a healthier, more sustainable dynamic where both partners are equally invested in their own well-being and the relationship's success. It's important to remember that prioritizing yourself isn't about rejecting your partner's needs or pulling away from the relationship. It's about ensuring you're showing up as your best self. When you take care of yourself, you have more to give to your partner in the relationship. You're more present, more resilient, and more capable of handling the ups and downs of life together. Ultimately, prioritizing yourself is an act of self-respect. It's a declaration that your dreams, needs, and happiness are just as important as anyone else's. It's about recognizing that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. By nurturing that relationship, you create a foundation of confidence, self-worth, and authenticity that benefits every other connection in your life. In conclusion, building a healthy and successful relationship requires mutual respect, understanding, and the ability to maintain individuality. Smart men understand that relationships are not about control, manipulation, or sacrifice at the expense of one's well-being. It's about balance, where both partners support and uplift each other while respecting personal boundaries and growth. By avoiding behaviors like disrespect, mind games, and neglecting one's own needs, men can create a relationship dynamic that fosters love, trust, and long-term fulfillment. Remember, a strong relationship is built on mutual respect, emotional honesty, and the recognition that both partners are worthy of love, care, and self-care. Prioritize yourself, honor your values, and treat your partner with the dignity they deserve, and the relationship will thrive. There comes a time in life when silence becomes louder than words, and absence speaks volumes no voice could ever express. Disappearing isn't about running away or hiding. It's about reclaiming your power, about stepping back to rediscover yourself. It's about making a statement without uttering a word. When you simply disappear, you force people to face truths they would rather ignore. They feel it deeply, and each feeling tells its own story. This is what happens when you choose to step away, when you stop explaining, stop justifying, and start protecting your peace. It's not a declaration of war, it's a quiet revolution. Let's explore the 9 things they feel when you simply disappear. Number 1, fearful loss. Number 2, repressed memories. And number 3, no peace. After the initial wave of confusion, guilt begins to set in, and a heavy, lingering emotion that wraps itself around their thoughts. They start to question themselves, probing into the past, to uncover their role in your decision to disappear. Guilt is a relentless voice in their mind, whispering accusations they can't ignore. Did they take you for granted? Were their words too harsh, their actions too careless? Did they fail to listen when you needed to be heard? This guilt isn't just a passing feeling, it's an emotional reckoning. They replay moments they brushed off, the times they chose convenience over care. Every sharp word or dismissive glance becomes a vivid memory, resurfacing with an intensity they never anticipated. Guilt pulls them into a spiral of self-reflection, forcing them to see the cracks in the foundation of the relationship they once shared with you. The weight of their guilt often grows heavier as they think about the opportunities they missed to show appreciation, to be more patient, or to simply ask how you were doing. They might recall the times they ignored the signs of your weariness or overlooked the silent cries for support. Guilt doesn't need grand events to thrive. It latches onto the smallest of moments, magnifying them until they feel unbearable. They might try to rationalize their behavior at first, convincing themselves that they were justified in their actions or inactions. But guilt is a persistent companion. It follows them into quiet moments, into the stillness of their nights, when there's no distraction strong enough to drown it out. It's not just about what they did, it's about what they didn't do, the kindness they withheld, the love they failed to express, the pain they withheld from the world they identified with, and the illness they failed to express. Even if they attempt to move forward, guilt lingers like a shadow, appearing at the most unexpected times. A familiar song, a fleeting memory, or even the absence of your voice can trigger a fresh wave of regret, leaving them to wrestle with the unanswered question, what could I have done differently? When someone disappears from your life, the feeling of loss is not immediate. It creeps in slowly, like a shadow stretching across the ground as the sun sets. It's not just the absence of a person, it's the void left behind where their energy, their laughter, their presence used to exist. Loss has a way of making itself known in the quietest moments, when the noise of life dies down and all that remains is the realization that something significant is missing. They feel the loss in the routines they once shared with you, no matter how small. Perhaps it was a daily conversation, a shared joke, or the comfort of knowing you were just a call away. The absence of these moments creates a hollowness that echoes louder with time. It's not just about losing you. It's about losing the part of themselves that came alive in your presence. Loss manifests itself physically, emotionally, and mentally. They may feel it as a heaviness in their chest, an ache they can't quite name. It's in the moments they instinctively reach out to you, only to remember you're no longer there. It's in the quiet spaces of their day where your voice used to fill the silence. Loss doesn't ask for permission, it inserts itself into their life, altering the landscape of their thoughts and emotions. It's not just the big moments where your absence is felt. It's in the mundane, the ordinary. A song that used to play in the background of your conversations, a place you both visited, a phrase you often said. These seemingly insignificant details now hold an unbearable weight, serving as constant reminders of what once was. Over time, the loss starts to reveal itself in ways they never expected. It challenges their sense of stability, reminding them that nothing in life is guaranteed. It forces them to confront the fragility of connections and the impermanence of relationships. It becomes a haunting presence, lingering in the background of their lives, coloring their experiences with shades of sorrow and longing. What makes loss so profound is its ability to stir up conflicting emotions. Regret for the things left unsaid, anger at themselves for not valuing you enough, and a yearning to go back in time to relive the moments they once took for granted. The void you leave behind becomes a mirror, reflecting all the ways in which they failed to truly appreciate your presence. Loss isn't just about what they no longer have. It's about what they realized they could have had but didn't. Reflection is a phase where the silence of your absence forces them to turn inward, to face themselves in a way they might have avoided before. It's in this stillness that their mind becomes a mirror, replaying memories, moments, and choices like a reel they can't pause. Reflection is not a comfortable process. It demands honesty, and honesty is rarely gentle. It brings forth the need to scrutinize a relationship, their role in it, and most of all, the choices that may have led to your disappearance. They begin by questioning the timeline, dissecting every interaction to identify where things might have shifted. Were there signs they missed? Were there moments where they should have paid closer attention? Reflection forces them to examine not only what they did, but also what they failed to do. The unspoken words, the unacknowledged efforts, and the neglected opportunities to make you feel seen and valued. This process can feel relentless as their mind drifts back to specific conversations or events that seemed insignificant at the time, but now hold a new weight. They may think about the times they interrupted you or dismissed your feelings, the moments they chose convenience over connection. Reflection often magnifies these instances, making them impossible to ignore. And in this magnification, they begin to see themselves more clearly. It's not just the relationship they reflect on, but also their own character. Your absence challenges them to confront traits and tendencies they may have been blind to before. They might realize patterns of selfishness, neglect, or insensitivity that went unchecked. Reflection can act as a harsh teacher, revealing the areas of their personality they need to address, but were unwilling or unable to see while you were present. Reflection doesn't just stay in the past, it stretches into the present and even the future. They may wonder how your absence is changing them, reshaping their perspective and influencing their actions moving forward. They start to see the ripple effects of their choices. How one decision, one moment, or one word has the power to alter the course of a relationship. Reflection forces them to acknowledge the responsibility they hold in the way things unfolded. This process can also lead them to question their values and priorities. Were they focused on the right things? Did they place too much emphasis on trivial matters while overlooking what truly mattered? Reflection brings to light the ways in which they may have misaligned their actions with their intentions. It holds a mirror up to their soul, revealing not only what they've lost, but also the person they became in the process. In reflection, they grapple with the deeper truths about themselves and their capacity to truly connect with others. It's an uncomfortable journey, one that compels them to face the reality of their choices and their impact on the people around them. It's not just about understanding what happened, it's about coming to terms with who they are and who they need to become. Regret arrives like an uninvited guest, settling into the corners of their mind and refusing to leave. It creeps in slowly at first with small reminders of what they should have done differently. Then it grows, becoming an ever-present weight that they carry throughout their days. Regret is not just about missing what was. It's about the missing what was. It's about the missed opportunities, the unspoken words, and the actions they can never take back. They think about the times they chose silence when they should have spoken up, or the moments when their pride held them back from apologizing. Regret forces them to relive those instances, playing them over and over in their mind, but this time with the clarity that hindsight provides. They see every mistake with vivid detail, every wrong turn they made that led to your disappearance. It's a painful realization, one that cuts deeper because there is no way to rewrite the past. Regret doesn't stay confined to specific moments. It spills over into every aspect of their life. They begin to see how their actions, or lack thereof, created a domino effect, leading to the loss of something they didn't fully value until it was gone. They regret the times they didn't listen closely enough, didn't show enough kindness, didn't go the extra mile to make you feel appreciated. It's not just the big things they regret, but also the little things that now feel monumental in their absence. The hurried conversations, the distracted responses, the times they brushed off your concerns because they assumed there would always be another chance. Regret sharpens these memories, making them feel like glaring omissions that can never be corrected. Regret also brings with it a haunting sense of what if. They wonder what might have been different if they had shown more patience, more understanding, more love. What if they had been braver in expressing their feelings or quicker to acknowledge their mistakes? These what ifs create a mental labyrinth they can't escape, trapping them in a cycle of longing for a second chance that will never come. Regret has a way of isolating them, making them feel as though they are trapped in a personal prison of their own making. It's not just about losing you. It's about losing the potential of what could have been. The plans they had, the memories they could have created, the milestones they might have shared. All of it feels like a door that has been permanently closed. This emotion doesn't just sit on the surface. It burrows deep, affecting how they see themselves. Regret forces them to confront their own shortcomings, their failure to be the person they wanted to be for you. It's a mirror that reflects their flaws in sharp detail, leaving no room for excuses or denial. Even as they try to move forward, regret lingers in the background, a constant reminder of the price of their choices. It colors their interactions with others, making them more hesitant, more cautious, because they know now how easily things can fall apart. Regret is not just a feeling, it's a shadow that follows them, a reminder of what they lost and what they can never regain. Curiosity emerges as one of the most potent emotions when you disappear from someone's life, weaving itself into every corner of their thoughts. It starts with simple questions that evolve into a relentless search for answers. They find themselves consumed by an insatiable need to know why you left, what led to your decision, and whether they played a role in it. Curiosity isn't passive. It's a driving force compelling them to revisit every interaction, every word exchanged, every moment shared, in search of clues they may have overlooked, that they wouldn't have seen until they were only a few pages away from the impersonal murder case that stopped them. They replay conversations in their mind, examining them from every angle, trying to uncover hidden meanings or subtle signals they might have missed. Did you drop hints they failed to pick up on? Were there warning signs they ignored, thinking everything was fine? Curiosity pushes them to dissect the smallest details, magnifying each one into a potential explanation. They begin to wonder if there was a single moment, a turning point they didn't recognize, where things began to change. This feeling grows stronger as they face the unknown aspects of your life after you disappeared. They want to know where you are, what you're doing, and whether you're better off without them. Social media becomes a maze they navigate with equal parts hesitation and determination, looking for glimpses of your life to piece together a narrative. I promise, my listeners, they will never leave the tower. I promise, I promise, I promise, I promise, I promise. Every post, every update, every photo feels like a puzzle piece that might offer them some clarity, yet it often leaves them with more questions than answers. Curiosity doesn't just focus on you, it also turns inward. They begin to question themselves, wondering what they could have done differently or whether they were blind to your feelings. It forces them to evaluate their actions and decisions, trying to connect the dots between who they were to you and why that wasn't enough to keep you in their life. Curiosity becomes a mirror reflecting their insecurities and uncertainties. making them scrutinize their own behavior in ways they may never have before. It also creates a sense of fascination with the idea of closure, even if it feels elusive. They imagine hypothetical conversations where you explain your reasons and they rehearse their responses, trying to make sense of a reality where those words will never come. Curiosity makes them wonder what you would say if they reached out, what they would hear if they asked the questions they're too afraid to voice. Curiosity extends beyond the immediate circumstances of your absence, seeping into the possibilities of your future without them. Are you thriving? Have you replaced them in your life with someone else who understands you better? These questions fuel their imagination, creating scenarios that range from hopeful to devastating. The unknown becomes a vast, uncharted territory that their mind can't help but explore. It's not just about finding answers, it's about the need to fill the void your disappearance has left. Curiosity pulls them into a cycle of wondering, searching, and imagining, leaving them trapped in the uncertainty of what could have been and what now is. It's a restless energy, a force that keeps their thoughts spinning, even when they desperately wish they could quiet their mind. Resentment arises as a defensive reaction, a shield against the vulnerability and pain left in your absence. It begins as a simmering frustration, an attempt to shift blame outward to avoid confronting their own role in the situation. They feel the sting of your disappearance, and rather than processing it with introspection, resentment grows as a way to externalize the hurt. Their lack of stinging grows as a way to externalize the hurt. It becomes an emotion that fuels their thoughts, casting you as a reason for their discomfort, their confusion, and their loss. They dwell on the moments where they feel you wronged them, replaying scenarios that cast them as the victim. Resentment thrives in this space, feeding on the notion that your departure was an unjust act, a betrayal of the relationship they thought they had. It distorts memories, coloring the good times with shades of bitterness and making even the smallest misunderstandings seem like deliberate slights. This feeling often leads them to question your intentions and motivations, interpreting your actions through the lens of their own pain. They convince themselves that your disappearance was calculated, an intentional decision to hurt or abandon them. Resentment sharpens these narratives, giving them a sense of righteousness that justifies their anger. They cling to this perspective as it's easier than confronting the possibility that their own behavior might have contributed to your decision. Resentment is fueled by the silence you left behind. In the absence of explanations, their mind fills the void with assumptions and accusations. They imagine scenarios where your actions were guided by selfishness, indifference, or even malice. These imagined narratives become a source of anger, perpetuating their sense of injustice. The lack of closure becomes a breeding ground for this emotion, as they feel robbed of the opportunity to defend themselves or seek resolution. It's not just about anger toward you, it's also about their own unmet expectations. Resentment often stems from a sense of entitlement, the belief that you owed them something more, whether it was loyalty, understanding, or simply an explanation. They feel betrayed by your decision to leave, as it shatters the image they had of your relationship and forces them to confront the reality of its imperfections. This emotion can also manifest as a competitive desire to prove you wrong. Resentment drives them to focus on their own accomplishments, not out of genuine ambition, but as a way to show you what you're missing. They want to reclaim a sense of power, to feel that they've won in the aftermath of your absence. Yet even as they try to channel resentment into action, it continues to weigh on them, reminding them of the unresolved pain that lies beneath their anger. Resentment creates a divide between how they see themselves and how they see you. They elevate their own perspective while diminishing yours, using this imbalance to justify their feelings. It's a defense mechanism, a way to shield themselves from the vulnerability of admitting that your absence affects them deeply. But the more they dwell on these thoughts, the more resentment takes root, making it harder for them to find peace or let go of the emotional burden. Even as they try to move forward, resentment lingers, tainting their interactions and relationships with others. It becomes a filter through which they view the world, making them more guarded, less trusting, and quicker to assign blame. This emotion, while seemingly empowering in the moment, ultimately traps them in a cycle of negativity as they remain fixated on the wounds of the past. Respect is a surprising and often paradoxical emotion that can emerge when you disappear from someone's life. It takes root as they begin to recognize the strength, courage, and self-awareness it must have taken for you to make that decision. They may not admit it outwardly, but deep down, there's an acknowledgement of the boundaries you set and the steps you took to prioritize your well-being. Respect grows as they reflect on the ways in which your departure was not an act of weakness, but one of immense personal conviction. They think about the moments leading up to your absence, the times when you may have felt unappreciated, unheard, or undervalued, and how, despite all of that, you chose to walk away with dignity. There's an unspoken admiration for the way you carried yourself, for not allowing the situation to break you, but instead using it as a catalyst for change. Respect often stems from the realization that you had the strength to do what they could not or would not do, to let go of something that no longer served you or aligned with your values. This feeling also arises as they come to terms with the depth of your self-respiration. It dawns on them that your disappearance was not just an escape, but a statement, a refusal to settle for less than you deserved. It forces them to reconsider their own actions and attitudes as they realize that your decision was a reflection of your principles and self-worth. Respect takes shape in their acknowledgement of how you refuse to compromise on your own happiness and growth, even if it meant making a difficult choice. Respect is not always immediate. It often grows over time as they observe the changes in themselves and in you. They begin to notice how your absence challenged them to confront their own shortcomings, to question their priorities, and to reflect on the dynamics that led to the parting of ways. Respect emerges as they see how your actions inspired growth, even if it came through discomfort. It's a recognition that your choice was not just for yourself, but inadvertently became a catalyst for their self-examination. They may also find themselves respecting the way you handled the departure itself. Perhaps you left without unnecessary drama, without bitterness or malice, simply stepping away with grace and purpose. This kind of exit leaves a lasting impression, one that speaks to your character and integrity. Respect grows from the way you chose to leave things, not with anger or spite, but with an understanding of your own worth and the courage to honor it. In the beginning, they might not understand it, or perhaps they view it as an escape. But as the days unfold, they start to see your absence in a new light. The realization that you left not because of weakness, but because you recognize the need for change, gives them permission to do the same in their own lives. They begin to ask themselves difficult questions. What am I tolerating that I shouldn't? What areas of my life need to be cleared out in order for me to thrive? Your disappearance becomes a spark that propels them toward reevaluating their own circumstances, motivations, and desires. And what might you be? McDowell references The Matrix, big mistakes. So if you're missing any part of The Matrix, Season 2 of The Simpsons features extra episodes made exclusively for this podcast. The Matrix, big mistakes. The way you walked away with conviction and strength challenges them to take a hard look at their own lives. They start to question the comfort zones they've built, the routines they've fallen into, and the people they've allowed to stay in their lives despite their negative impact. Motivation arises from the desire to make a change, to break free from the limitations they've imposed on themselves, just as you have done. They recognize that you didn't just disappear out of frustration. You made a choice, a bold decision to prioritize your happiness, growth, and peace. And now they want to make similar choices in their own life. As they reflect on your disappearance, they begin to see it as a challenge to stop playing small, to stop accepting mediocrity or fear as a reason to stay stuck. They realize that, just like you, they have the power to make decisions that align with their truth, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable it may be. They begin to understand that true motivation comes from within, from a place of knowing that they are worthy of more. And they too can create their own version of a better life. Your absence becomes a reminder that it's never too late to change, to take control, and to create the life they desire. Motivation rises from the simple truth that if you could make the difficult choice to walk away and pursue your own path, then they too have that same power. They begin to feel a sense of urgency, a renewed commitment to their own dreams, and a stronger belief in their ability to act upon them. It's no longer about waiting for the right circumstances or the right time. Your disappearance tells them that the time is always now, that the only thing standing between them and the life they want is their willingness to take that first step. And now, I speak for all of us. We are ready. This motivation doesn't come from an external push or the need to prove anything to anyone. It is internal, deeply rooted in the realization that they have agency over their lives. They start to understand that they are not bound by circumstances, nor are they defined by the limitations they or others may have placed upon them. Your decision to disappear becomes a mirror in which they see the potential for their own growth, and they feel motivated to take the reins of their destiny with the same courage and decisiveness you exhibited. Is that clear? The fact that you are aware of that, you took and set a clear and decisive target, and you're calling it for what it is, and everybody is witness. As they face their own struggles and challenges, motivation serves as a constant reminder of the possibility of transformation. They start to believe in their own power to change their reality, to break free from old patterns, and to pursue the life they've been putting off for too long. Your disappearance becomes a catalyst for their own personal awakening, and with that, motivation flows through them, pushing them forward with a renewed sense of purpose and clarity. In conclusion, when you disappear from someone's life, the impact is profound and multifaceted. At first, they may experience confusion, guilt, and a sense of loss as they attempt to understand the reasons behind your absence. But over time, as they reflect, these emotions begin to transform. They may be left with a sense of respect for the strength it took for you to make that choice, and a deep motivation to take control of their own lives. Resentment may initially cloud their judgment, but as they confront their own role in the dynamic, they might start to see the situation differently. They are left with regret over things left unsaid, and curiosity that drives them to reconsider their own actions and decisions. The absence of clarity pushes them toward reflection and forces them to confront their own truths, shaping them in ways they didn't anticipate. Ultimately, your disappearance becomes a turning point not only for you, but also for them. It challenges them to grow, to reflect on what's truly important, and to find their own path to fulfillment. In the end, your absence doesn't just leave a void, it ignites a transformation, both in the way they view you and the way they view themselves. The power of your decision lies in its ability to spark change, to break the chains of complacency, and to inspire a deeper, more meaningful journey for everyone involved. No contact. Two simple words, yet they carry a weight that most people don't fully understand until they're in the thick of it. It's a move of power, self-respect, and healing, but it's not just a straight path to peace. The person on the other side, the one you've cut ties with, is not left unshaken by this decision. Whether they admit it or not, they go through stages of confusion, realization, and sometimes regret. Today, let's break it down. Let's dive into the 9 stages they go through during no contact. Shock and confusion are the first emotions to strike when someone realizes you've cut off contact. It's a visceral reaction, almost like being plunged into cold water without warning. They've grown used to your presence, your responses, your attention, your availability has been a constant, something they likely took for granted. And now, all of a sudden, that lifeline is gone. The silence you've created is loud to them, deafening even, because it disrupts the rhythm they've come to expect. In this stage, their mind scrambles for answers. They might ask themselves questions like, what just happened, or is this serious? They replay the last interaction, searching for clues, trying to pinpoint the exact moment things shifted. The confusion leaves them in a state of disbelief, unsure whether this is just a temporary pause or something more permanent. It's unsettling because it forces them to confront the reality of your absence, a reality they didn't prepare for. This shock often manifests in small, impulsive actions. They might send a quick text, hoping for reassurance. They may check your social media, looking for signs of life, anything that indicates you're still reachable. Their confusion is layered with denial. They can't fully grasp that you've chosen to walk away. And because they didn't see it coming, the shock lingers longer than it would if there had been an obvious buildup to this moment. During this phase, they're left to grapple with their own emotions, unsure of how to navigate the void. The lack of control they feel is unnerving, and it's the first crack in the facade they may have built up around your relationship. Shock and confusion mark the beginning of their journey through no contact, setting the stage for the deeper realizations and emotional shifts yet to come. Denial is the second stage in the emotional roller coaster that comes with no contact, and it often follows closely after the shock. It's the stage where the person's mind refuses to accept what's happening, choosing instead to live in a space where things are not as they seem. In this moment, they can't fathom the idea that you've truly chosen to cut them off. Their initial instinct is to convince themselves that it's just a temporary glitch, something that will blow over with time. They tell themselves this isn't permanent, they'll come around. At this point, they may try to downplay the situation in their minds, rationalizing that maybe you're just upset, maybe you need some space, maybe you're overreacting. They don't want to admit that they've lost your presence or that your decision could be a result of their own actions. Denial is a defense mechanism, a way for them to keep themselves from fully experiencing the emotional weight of the situation. It's easier to believe that things are just on pause than to face the truth that your decision to cut ties is deliberate and final. They may distract themselves by staying busy, diving into work, spending time with friends, or even trying to find solace in other relationships. The more they engage in these distractions, the more they convince themselves that your absence doesn't matter as much as it really does. This denial is often reinforced by their pride. They don't want to face the possibility that they were the ones who pushed you to this point, so they cling to the idea that everything will return to normal soon. In their conversations with others, they might even downplay your decision. They'll come back when they realize how much I mean to them, they may say. Or they'll express doubt about the sincerity of your actions, thinking that maybe you're just testing them, pulling away temporarily to get a reaction. There is a refusal to accept that you've had enough, that your boundaries are not up for negotiation, and that this time things are truly different. At the core of this stage is fear, the fear of the unknown, of truly losing someone they care about. Denial allows them to hold onto that fear, shielding themselves from the pain of reality. But the longer they stay in this state, the deeper the pain will eventually be when the truth finally catches up with them. The cycle of denial at its core is about maintaining control, holding on to what they had, and avoiding the truth about how things really ended. Ego kicks in during the third stage of no contact, and it's one of the most powerful emotional responses a person can experience. When they're faced with the reality of losing you, their pride and sense of self-worth come to the forefront. The idea that you've chosen to walk away challenges their belief that they are important, valuable, or irreplaceable in your life. In their mind, this isn't just about a relationship ending, it's about a personal affront to their image, their status, and the control they once had. In this stage, their ego refuses to acknowledge the possibility that their actions, whether intentional or not, could have led to this situation. Instead, they look outward, projecting blame onto you. It's not about them doing something wrong. It's about you somehow making a mistake, overreacting, or being unfair. Their ego tells them that they're the ones in control of the situation, that they're the one with the power to decide what happens next. It's a defense mechanism, a way for them to shield themselves from feelings of vulnerability or shame. They might find themselves making excuses for their behavior, justifying past actions or words that have caused pain. I was just being honest, they might say, or they misunderstood me, trying to absolve themselves of any responsibility in the breakdown of the relationship. Their ego doesn't allow them to see their flaws, and it certainly doesn't allow them to take ownership of the damage they've caused. Instead, they fixate on how the situation makes them look. They may even tell themselves that you'll eventually regret your decision because their ego refuses to accept that you could walk away for good. In some cases, this can lead to anger and resentment. The more they feel their ego is wounded, the more likely they are to lash out, either by trying to contact you in a way that feels manipulative or by speaking poorly about you to others. Their desire to prove that they're in control, to restore their sense of self-worth, becomes all-consuming. It's almost as if they believe that if they can make you feel guilty or confused enough, you'll come back to them, reaffirming their own sense of power and importance. But the longer they stay in this ego-driven mindset, the further they push you away. Their attempts to regain control are often misguided and fail to recognize that the situation is not about them winning or losing, but about both of you learning and growing. Their ego's response is a barrier to true self-awareness, making it difficult for them to recognize that the path forward isn't about fighting for validation, but about humility and understanding the reasons behind the break. The longer the ego reigns, the harder it becomes to find a way back to clarity and emotional healing. The what-ifs begin to surface during the fourth stage of no contact, and this is where the mind starts to spiral into the realm of uncertainty. After the initial shock, confusion, and the ego's protective reaction, the person starts to question everything. They begin to replay the events of the relationship over and over again, focusing on the small details, the conversations, the moments they think they could have done better. The what-ifs are a powerful force during this stage because they make them reconsider everything. Was there something they missed, something they could have changed, some small action they could have taken that might have made all the difference? They think, what if I had said something different that day? What if I had acted more patiently or been more understanding? What if I had given them the space they needed? What if I hadn't pushed so hard? What if I had listened more? These questions linger in their mind, not just once, but in an endless loop. They might fixate on a single conversation, a disagreement, or a seemingly insignificant moment, convinced that if they had acted differently, things would have turned out better. The what-ifs serve as a constant reminder of their perceived failure, and with every iteration, they believe they could have turned the situation around. The mind starts to dwell on the idea of what could have been rather than accepting the reality of what is. It's a form of self-inflicted torment, where they torment themselves with the belief that they somehow missed an opportunity to keep the relationship alive. The longer this stage goes on, the more they begin to second-guess themselves, doubting their actions and wondering whether they truly understood the depth of the situation or their partner's needs. This period is emotionally exhausting as they try to analyze every choice they made, hoping that somewhere within those choices there was a key that could have kept everything intact. They might even begin to overanalyze your behavior, asking themselves, what was their reaction? Was there something in their eyes that I missed? Was there something that I didn't notice that told me they were pulling away? They try to reconstruct the puzzle of the past, but they can't see the full picture, only the fragments they believe are relevant. The what-ifs are dangerous because they tend to put the person in a state of constant regret. Instead of being present and accepting the consequences of their actions, they live in the past, constantly imagining different scenarios that might have led to a different outcome. This thought pattern creates a vicious cycle where they feel as though they can never move forward because they are consumed by the need for resolution, an answer to the ultimate question, could I have saved this relationship if I had done something differently? At the same time, the what-ifs breed self-doubt. The longer they stay in this stage, the harder it becomes to accept that the relationship ended for a reason, that both parties are responsible for what led to the separation, and that sometimes, no matter what they could have done, the relationship simply ran its course. But they are not ready to face this yet. They are still locked in the what-if cycle, unable to see that moving on and accepting what happened is the real key to healing. As the stages of no contact unfold, the next inevitable step is when attempts to reconnect begin to surface. This stage is crucial because it signals a shift in the person's emotional journey. The shock and confusion start to wear off, the denial fades, and the ego begins to recognize the reality of the situation. It is at this point that many individuals, driven by a combination of guilt, desperation, and longing, begin to reach out, trying to reestablish communication. This is where the emotional vulnerability that they've been suppressing starts to push them to make bold moves, sometimes impulsively, to get back in touch. Their first instinct may be to send a simple text, a casual message, or even a quick phone call, thinking it will somehow bridge the gap or open the door to communication. They might tell themselves that they're just checking in or seeing how you're doing. But underneath that surface level attempt is a deeper desire to restore the connection, to regain what they've lost, and to find comfort in familiarity. This may happen through social media posts, indirect messages, or even mutual friends looking for any way to create an opening. But these attempts to reconnect are rarely about genuine reconciliation. They are often driven by fear, loneliness, and regret. The person may feel a growing sense of panic, realizing that the absence of your presence in their life is beginning to hit harder than they expected. The reality of your absence forces them to face their own emotions, their own vulnerabilities, and they start to feel that perhaps they've made a mistake by letting you go or by failing to put in the effort the relationship required. They begin to feel a sense of urgency, as though time is running out to repair what has been broken. This can cause them to reach out in ways that feel disconnected or inauthentic, as they're trying to regain control of a situation that has spiraled out of their hands. They might try to manipulate or subtly guilt you into responding, hoping that any reaction from you, even if it's anger or frustration, will reignite the conversation. They'll send a message like, "I don't know what happened between us, but I miss you." Or, "I can't stop thinking about you. Can we talk?" They try to throw out feelers, testing the waters to see if you're willing to engage. At this stage, their attempts at reconnection might not come from a place of genuine emotional growth or understanding. They're often more about alleviating their own discomfort. They feel the void left by your absence, and the ego, which was once fully entrenched in pride and denial, now starts to crack under the weight of that emptiness. They may have thought that they were fine without you, but as time passes and the no contact period stretches on, they are forced to confront the pain of that realization. In some cases, these attempts to reconnect come with ulterior motives. They may not necessarily be seeking closure or trying to rebuild the relationship, but rather attempting to regain some form of control, to validate their own feelings, or to satisfy their own emotional needs. They might think that by reaching out, they can restore their self-worth, convince themselves that they haven't truly lost you, or test the waters to see if you'll chase after them. Their actions can be erratic, confusing, and sometimes manipulative because they're driven by internal fear, not by a clear understanding of what they want or need from the situation. You may see their messages become more frequent, more insistent, as they try different methods to reach you, texting, calling, or even showing up in person. The pressure to respond becomes tangible, but it's crucial to recognize that these attempts are more about their internal battle than your relationship. Their desperation to reconnect is a reflection of their need for reassurance, not necessarily a desire for healing or meaningful change. It's a natural yet often misguided response to the pain of separation, where they're hoping that rekindling communication will bring some semblance of peace or closure. But make no mistake, these attempts don't always come from a place of respect for your boundaries or understanding of the deeper issues at play. They're often driven by the desire to undo the hurt they feel, rather than acknowledging the full scope of the damage caused. As these attempts to reconnect continue, they reveal more about their emotional state, their inability to let go, and their struggle to face the consequences of their actions. As the no contact period continues, the individual eventually enters a stage known as the realization of loss. This is one of the most poignant and transformative moments in the emotional journey because it marks the moment when they finally understand the depth of what has been lost. It's no longer just about the absence of communication or the simple gap created by space. It becomes a visceral, undeniable feeling that the connection they once had has been permanently altered, and they begin to grasp that it may never return to what it was. This realization brings with it a heavyweight one that's filled with regret, sadness, and often guilt. They begin to see the truth of the situation, and that truth is painful. They have lost something valuable, something irreplaceable, and it's too late to undo the damage. In this stage, the person may have already gone through the shock, confusion, and denial phases where they tried to suppress or ignore the emotional consequences of the separation. The ego has been bruised, the initial impulse to act out of pride or anger has subsided, and the defense mechanisms they built up start to crumble. The reality of their actions, the things they said or did that pushed you away, the mistakes they made, and the opportunities they missed start to hit them hard. No longer able to lie to themselves, they see the full picture of what they've lost, and it stings. This realization isn't just about acknowledging that you're no longer in their life, but about recognizing the impact of their own behavior. They start to understand that the pain they are experiencing is a consequence of their own choices, their failure to communicate effectively, or their inability to appreciate what they had when they had it. It's a bitter pill to swallow, because it's not just the absence of the person they're grappling with, the loss of potential, with what could have been if only they had acted differently, if only they had given more, or if only they had been more present. The individual begins to mourn the relationship in a deeper way now, as they realize that the time and effort they once took for granted have slipped through their fingers. This mourning period is not just a moment of sadness, it's a reflection of their own self-awareness, their own growth, and sometimes even their own failure to live up to their own ideals. The realization can often spark a great deal of self-reflection as they start to question their own role in the breakdown of the connection and whether they could have done things differently. They may start to experience waves of nostalgia, remembering the good times, the laughter, the comfort, and the companionship they shared with you. And in these moments, the absence feels even more profound. They begin to realize just how much you brought to their life, how much your presence influenced their happiness and their sense of self. They may recognize that it wasn't just about love or affection, but about the support, the growth, and the balance that you provided. The things they took for granted now appear as treasures that can never be replaced. In some cases, the realization of loss can trigger a deep sense of fear of never finding something like what they had with you, fear of never experiencing that connection again. They might even begin to panic, trying to find ways to reverse the damage, but it's during this stage that they fully come to terms with the fact that the past can't be relived. No matter how hard they try, the space between you has created an irreparable fracture, and they begin to feel the weight of that truth. This stage of realization is also where their emotional defenses are at their most vulnerable. No longer able to hide behind pride, excuses, or distractions, they are forced to confront the loss head-on. This might manifest as emotional turmoil, anger, frustration, sadness, even shame as they struggle to reconcile their actions with the reality of the situation. They start to see that no amount of what-ifs can change the present. The loss is real, and it's something that they must now learn to accept, whether they are ready to or not. The realization of loss also compels them to ask themselves difficult questions. What did I do wrong? Why didn't I fight harder for this? How could I have been so blind to what I had? These questions can lead to an internal dialogue that is both painful and enlightening. It's at this point that they may begin to see their own flaws and mistakes, recognizing how their own actions or lack thereof led them to the point of separation. And while this recognition may be a step toward emotional growth, it is also a heavy burden to bear, as it forces them to confront the consequences of their choices. This stage is often a turning point. It's where they have to decide whether to sit in the pain of loss, to learn from it, and to grow, or to continue in their denial, clinging to the hope that they can undo the damage. But at this moment, it's clear the realization of loss is a defining moment in the emotional journey, one that requires deep introspection and the painful acceptance that some things cannot be reclaimed. Regret and guilt are some of the most powerful emotions that emerge during the no-contact period, and when they take hold, they can be overwhelming. These emotions arise when the individual begins to recognize the weight of their own mistakes and the consequences of their actions. Regret. in particular, is a deep, sorrowful awareness that things could have been different, that choices could have been made that would have led to a different outcome. It's not just about wishing things had gone another way, it's about realizing that they had the power to alter the course of events, but failed to do so. This feeling of lost opportunity can sting because it feels like a missed chance that can never be recovered. They look back and wonder why they didn't act sooner, why they didn't see the signs, or why they allowed the relationship to deteriorate in the first place. Regret comes hand in hand with guilt, which is a much more personal and internal feeling. Guilt is rooted in the belief that they are responsible for causing harm to you or the relationship. It's a recognition that their actions, whether they were selfish, dismissive, or negligent, have hurt someone they cared about. And that pain now sits heavily on their conscience. The guilt comes from knowing that they didn't do enough, didn't show up when it mattered, or failed to be the partner you needed them to be. Guilt isn't just an emotional response, it often leads to an internal punishment where the individual might beat themselves up over their failures, thinking they somehow deserve to feel the pain they've caused. The feelings of regret and guilt also bring about self-doubt. They begin to question their own worth, their decision-making, and their ability to maintain healthy relationships. They may ask themselves whether they are capable of making better choices in the future, or if they are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. This internal conflict can be exhausting, and the emotional burden of regret can feel like a weight that is too heavy to carry. In moments of clarity, they might even wonder if they truly deserve forgiveness or if the damage they've caused is beyond repair. There is a tendency for the person in this stage to replay the moments leading up to the no contact period, focusing on the key actions or words that led to the breakdown. They might revisit every argument, every misstep, every moment of indifference, and think about how they could have acted differently. This creates an endless loop of negative self-reflection, where they are consumed by thoughts of if only. This obsessive analysis often doesn't lead to any productive outcome, but only deepens the regret as they realize the irreversible nature of the situation. If only thoughts don't change the past, they simply amplify the pain of knowing that things will never be the same. At this point, they may also experience guilt for not having been more supportive or for taking you for granted when they had you. They may regret the times they ignored your needs, dismissed your feelings, or failed to recognize the value of what you brought to their life. The guilt can even extend to the way they treated you in the relationship, the times they let their emotions control their actions, or the moments they didn't put in the effort to truly understand you. The weight of knowing that their behavior led to the fracture of the relationship can feel like a relentless burden that they carry with them, sometimes even when they try to move forward. This emotional turmoil often manifests physically as well. The guilt and regret may cause sleepless nights, restless thoughts, and an inability to focus on anything else. Their mind is consumed by the idea that they've ruined something precious, and the weight of their regret can affect their mood and energy. They may become distant or withdrawn, not because they want to, but because they are battling an inner conflict that's too heavy to face head on. It's a type of emotional exhaustion where the person is so caught up in the past that they have little energy left for the present. Moreover, the individual may feel a sense of deep loss, not just of you, but of the vision of the future they once had with you. Regret often involves mourning not just the relationship, but the potential that relationship held. They start to picture the life they could have had, the growth they could have experienced, and the connection they could have nurtured. But these possibilities now feel like distant dreams, replaced with the harsh reality that those opportunities are no longer within reach. This adds another layer to their regret, as they realize that they might never have the chance to experience what they once took for granted. For some, the guilt and regret can lead to feelings of worthlessness. They may feel unworthy of a second chance or unworthy of love, believing that their actions have proven that they are incapable of maintaining a meaningful relationship. This self-loathing can become a destructive force in their lives, preventing them from moving on or learning from their mistakes. Instead of growing from the experience, they may continue to wallow in the negative emotions, further entrenching themselves in guilt. At the same time, guilt and regret can also spark a desire for redemption. The individual may find themselves contemplating how they can make amends or if there's any way to fix the damage they've caused. This urge to make things right can drive them to seek forgiveness or to attempt actions that might repair the relationship. However, they often face the painful reality that no amount of apologies or gestures can undo the harm they've done. The relationship may have already reached a point where the damage is too significant to repair, and that's a truth that's hard to face. Ultimately, the regret and guilt phase is a pivotal moment in the emotional journey. It's a crossroads where the individual is forced to confront their actions and the consequences of those actions. It's a painful realization that can lead to growth or destruction depending on how they choose to handle it. The regret and guilt are not easily overcome, but they are powerful emotions that serve as a stark reminder of the impact their behavior has had not just on you, but on themselves as well. And it's through this struggle that they might begin to understand the deeper truths about themselves and their capacity to change. Self-reflection and change are some of the most significant stages in the process of emotional growth, especially when faced with the consequences of actions that led to the breakdown of a relationship. This phase is when the individual begins to look inward and starts to question who they are, what they did, and why they made the choices they did. It's a time for deep introspection, where the noise of the outside world quiets and the focus shifts entirely to themselves. They start to reflect on their behavior and actions, analyzing the patterns that led to the situation they now find themselves in. This stage is not just about looking at what went wrong in the relationship, but also about understanding the underlying causes of their own behavior and how it shaped their interactions with you. Self-reflection in this stage is often uncomfortable. The individual may confront uncomfortable truths about themselves that they've avoided for a long time. They might realize that they have been selfish or neglectful, that they failed to communicate effectively, or that they took you in the relationship for granted. For some, the realization can be overwhelming. It's not just about pointing out flaws in the other person or blaming external factors. This is the time when they look directly at themselves and recognize the role they played in the downfall of the relationship. It's about taking responsibility for their actions and acknowledging the mistakes they've made, no matter how difficult or painful that might be. This kind of self-reflection is crucial for personal growth because it forces the person to stop deflecting blame and to face their own shortcomings. It challenges them to recognize areas where they may have been emotionally unavailable, manipulative, or dismissive, and where those actions hurt you or affected the relationship in negative ways. They might begin to see the patterns in their behavior, the things they do out of habit or fear that sabotage relationships or prevent them from truly connecting with others. This self-awareness can be a difficult pill to swallow, but it is the first step toward change. They can no longer deny the role they played, and this forces them to take a hard look at who they are and whether they want to continue being the person they've always been. For some, this period of self-reflection also involves revisiting past experiences, childhood memories, and learned behaviors. They may begin to understand how their upbringing or past relationships shape their emotional responses and patterns. The deep-rooted insecurities, unresolved trauma, or unhealthy beliefs they may have carried into the relationship start to surface. They may see that they were projecting their own fears, pain, or emotional wounds onto you rather than dealing with those issues internally. This understanding opens the door to healing as they begin to realize that their actions were often a reflection of their own unresolved issues and not entirely about you or the relationship itself. Change begins to take shape during this phase of self-reflection. Once they've acknowledged their flaws, shortcomings, and mistakes, the next step is deciding whether they are willing to make changes. This is where many people struggle because true change requires more than just insight, it requires action. Self-reflection without action is just self-pity, but when it leads to real change, it becomes a catalyst for growth. This is when they must ask themselves the hard questions. Am I willing to change? Am I committed to becoming a better version of myself? Do I want to break free from the destructive patterns of my past and create healthier habits for the future? The desire for change is often sparked by the pain of regret and the realization of loss. They now understand what they've lost, and it's this loss that motivates them to transform. They may begin to question their beliefs, values, and the way they approach relationships. This phase marks the beginning of a potential shift in how they view themselves and others. They might start setting new boundaries, working on improving their communication skills, or seeking therapy to heal past wounds. It is through this commitment to change that they can begin to rebuild themselves and create healthier relationships in the future. However, this process of change is not quick or easy. True change requires consistency, effort, and time. It's about building new habits that foster emotional maturity, self-awareness, and respect for others. It's about unlearning toxic behaviors and replacing them with healthier alternatives. During this time, the individual may experience moments of doubt, frustration, and setbacks. Change is rarely a smooth path, and the temptation to revert to old behaviors may be strong. But the key to lasting change lies in perseverance, the willingness to continue pushing forward, even when it feels difficult, uncomfortable, or uncertain. Self-reflection and change also involves setting new goals for personal development. It's about recognizing the areas in their life that need improvement and committing to working on them. Whether it's emotional intelligence, self-control, or learning how to express love and affection in healthier ways, these goals become the blueprint for the person's growth. They begin to see that personal transformation isn't just about fixing what's broken, but about becoming the best version of themselves for their own well-being and for those they care about. This transformation is not solely for the purpose of winning you back or repairing the relationship, but for the sake of their own healing and growth. This process of self-reflection and change can also inspire a shift in their perspective on relationships as a whole. They may come to understand that true love and connection are not about manipulation, control, or dependency, but about mutual respect, trust, and growth. They might realize that a healthy relationship begins with a healthy sense of self, where both partners are emotionally mature, self-aware, and committed to supporting each other. They may even recognize that stepping back and reflecting on their actions is a powerful tool for cultivating deeper connections, not just with you, but with others in their life. Ultimately, self-reflection and change are the foundation for healing, growth, and the possibility of future success in relationships. It's the beginning of a journey toward becoming a more self-aware, emotionally mature, and responsible individual. Through this process, they not only learn to understand their past mistakes, but also gain the tools to build a better future, whether that involves rebuilding a relationship or forging new, healthier ones. It's a painful but necessary phase that can lead to profound transformation, as long as they are willing to put in the effort and stay committed to the path of growth. Acceptance is one of the most transformative and crucial stages that anyone can go through when processing the end of a relationship or any kind of significant emotional hardship. It's the moment when you stop fighting reality and start to embrace the truth of the situation. This stage doesn't come easily, and it's not something that happens overnight. It is a process that takes time and a willingness to face the pain head-on, understanding that healing is a journey and not an event. Acceptance is not about forgetting the past or pretending that everything is okay. Instead, it's about acknowledging what happened, letting go of the anger or bitterness, and realizing that while you cannot change the past, you have the power to shape your future. At this stage, you start to see the situation for what it truly is, rather than what you wished it could have been. You begin to understand that despite how much you may have hoped for a different outcome, some things were never meant to work out in the way you envisioned. It's the realization that you were doing the best you could with the knowledge, skills, and emotional capacity you had at the time, but now it's time to let go. Acceptance requires a deep level of self-compassion, recognizing that you're human, that you make mistakes, and that there is no perfect way to navigate life or relationships. It's not about beating yourself up for what could have been done differently, but instead about coming to terms with the fact that life unfolded the way it did, and that's okay. For some, acceptance comes after an intense period of grieving, while for others it may happen gradually as they process the events that led to the end of the relationship. The pain doesn't disappear immediately, and it can sometimes feel like the wounds are still fresh. However, in this stage, you begin to release the need to control everything or to continue wishing for a different reality. You start to see that acceptance is the path to freedom, the freedom to move on, to heal, and to grow. It's about understanding that while you may never have all the answers or understand everything fully, you can still choose to release the grip that the past has over you. You stop replaying the events in your mind, trying to find the one thing you could have done differently, and instead you focus on the lessons learned from the experience. This stage of acceptance often involves recognizing the emotional damage that occurred and coming to terms with it. While you may have tried to stay strong or put up a facade during the earlier stages, you now start to acknowledge the hurt you've been carrying. But rather than letting that hurt define you, acceptance allows you to move past it. It's not about pretending you're fine or brushing your emotions under the rug. Instead, you let yourself feel the weight of the pain, but you also allow yourself to let go of the burden. It's about realizing that the past is something you can't change, but it doesn't have to hold you hostage either. You start to forgive yourself for what you might have done wrong, and you come to a place where you can release any lingering resentment or anger toward the other person involved. Acceptance is a form of emotional liberation, freeing yourself from the chains of the past. In relationships, acceptance may also involve understanding the other person's limitations. It's about realizing that they too are human with their own fears, insecurities, and struggles. You may not agree with their actions or their treatment of you, but you come to accept that their behavior was a reflection of their own personal struggles and not necessarily a reflection of your worth. This doesn't mean excusing harmful actions, but it does mean recognizing that everyone has their own journey, and sometimes those journeys lead them to make decisions that affect others in negative ways. Acceptance allows you to separate yourself from the other person's issues and to understand that their actions are not yours to carry. This phase of acceptance also requires a shift in mindset. It's about choosing not to view the end of the relationship or the hurt you experience as a permanent scar, but rather as a temporary moment in time. Acceptance helps you change your narrative, moving away from the story of victimhood to one of empowerment. You begin to see yourself not as someone who was wrong, but as someone who faced adversity, learned valuable lessons, and emerged stronger because of it. Acceptance is about reclaiming your power, taking responsibility for your own healing, and recognizing that your future is not determined by the past. You are not defined by what happened, but by what you choose to do moving forward. Moreover, acceptance brings with it the possibility of peace. It's about making the conscious decision to let go of any lingering anger or hurt that might prevent you from fully moving forward. It's about choosing to live in the present and allowing the past to stay where it belongs behind you. You stop waiting for an apology, an explanation, or for things to go back to the way they were. You recognize that peace comes not from what you can control, but from how you choose to respond to what life has thrown your way. Acceptance is about finding peace within yourself, not because things are perfect, but because you've made peace with the imperfection of life. This stage can also bring with it a deep sense of gratitude. As you come to accept the end of a relationship or a painful chapter, you begin to appreciate the growth that came from it. You might realize that what you thought was a setback was actually a setup for something greater. You learn to see the lessons hidden in the pain and to honor the journey that led you to a deeper understanding of yourself. Acceptance doesn't just allow you to move on, it gives you the tools to thrive in the future, equipped with a new perspective, a more resilient heart, and a deeper sense of wisdom. The power of acceptance lies in its ability to free you from the past and open you up to a brighter, more fulfilling future. It is through acceptance that you stop fighting against what is and begin to embrace what could be. It is in this space of acceptance that healing truly begins and where growth, strength, and a renewed sense of self emerge. In conclusion, the journey through no contact is not just about silence or distance. It's a transformative process that leads individuals to confront their emotions, their mistakes, and their true desires. The 9 stages: shock, confusion, denial, ego, what-ifs, attempts to reconnect, realization of loss, regret and guilt, self-reflection, and finally, acceptance are all vital steps in understanding not only the dynamics of a relationship, but also the strength and growth that emerge from adversity. Each stage, while challenging, offers an opportunity for introspection and healing, and by embracing this process, you pave the way for a healthier, more grounded future. While it may be difficult to navigate the emotional turmoil that comes with no contact, it is through these stages that we ultimately find clarity, peace, and the courage to move forward.